When the first and second Yakuza games got remakes, many new fans started jumping aboard the Yakuza series, including me, with the new, easy, more fleshed out and fun way to play old titles. Execution of both Kiwamis was pretty different, as RGG was transitioning engines and changing the formula away from what Yakuza 0 seemingly made the norm at the time. Still, during this time, many fans expected the Kiwami series to get a third release, specifically a remake of the Beach Yakuza Orphanage Simulator, Yakuza 3. Not only did people think that this was the next logical step for the Kiwami series, but also rumors spread about it being in the works. And now, over time, we witnessed that it seems not only did RGG Studios never have plans for a Kiwami 3, but it is possible that it will never be made in the first place. But with the recent directions that RGG has been going into, there is much more hope for a Kiwami 3. Good evening, gents. I'm Vladdy, and today we're going to be talking about the possibility of Yakuza Kiwami 3 getting released. First off, the remastered versions of Yakuza 3 through 5 are available on PC, while Yakuza 1 and 2 don't have remasters. This is because both the first and second game already have remakes. We could deduct that since there is a remastered version of 3, they will most likely never remake the game. But there were times when both Yakuza 1 and 2 had remastered versions for the Wii U and PlayStation 3. This was most likely because RGG Studios was making the games more available for players before they were remastered on the current generation of consoles. Considering that RGG was probably a bit too busy with Yakuza 5 to start remaking 1 and 2. So we could argue that in Yakuza 3's case, since RGG was focusing heavily on Judgment and Yakuza 7, we could assume that plans were not made for a Kiwami remake for Yakuza 3. So in the meantime, they made a PC release while they tackled other important projects later on, like a Dragon Gaiden and Yakuza 8. Because Yakuza 3 is somewhat dated, we can also assume RGG might take a look at the possibility of making the game now that they have gotten their hands free. This seems like a reasonable step for the Yakuza franchise after Yakuza 8. Because Judgment seemingly has ended and the next mainline game will probably take a while, I reckon Kiwami 3 may be in the works, as well as a spin-off to tide the fans over after Yakuza 8. Overall, Yakuza 3 could use a remake, as the game is somewhat dated. The story is beautiful, but it is kind of held back by the combat and bland extra content. A thing many fans loved about the Kiwami games was that they added so much more content to the game. The added sub-stories and the mini-games and the attention to detail to even the smallest of things. It makes the world of Yakuza seem so real. Yakuza 0 completely embraced the slice-of-life attitude, completely immersing the player in 1980s Japan. Seeing this with the vibrant and sunny location that is Okinawa would be just beautiful. And of course, don't get me started on the new models. The Yakuza fanbase always appreciates a revamp of an old model. RGG absolutely killed it with Ryuji in Kiwami 2, and even minor characters like Kazuto Arase were made with such good detail and look completely badass. I remember seeing him in my first playthrough of Kiwami, and I just thought that he was the embodiment of evil, just pure scum. And that's what we want. We want RGG to just fuel those emotions in the battles and in the cutscenes. But anyway, the elephant in the room when it comes to discussing a remake of Yakuza 3 is the combat. When it comes to Yakuza games, a great combat system really carries a lot of weight. My personal opinions on the combat system in Yakuza 3 is that it could definitely be better. It's more than fine for the time, but it's a bit lackluster jumping from Kiwami 2 to Yakuza 3. Despite that, the battles are not repetitive, but still not as flashy and exciting as in newer titles. Bringing back multiple styles could possibly liven up the gameplay. Considering Mine was the first boss in the Yakuza series to change styles during a fight, it would be only fitting to bring back Kiryu's styles. Also, considering how they reintroduced Rush and Beast styles for Kiryu in Yakuza 8's RPG system, we know at least RGG has not forgotten about Kiryu's style changing. Maybe even change up the styles or replace them, like a Dragon Gaiden has a new ancient style. With the way Lost Judgment executed the fighting styles, I would love to see Kiryu get an updated moveset. Ishin Kiwami recently came out, and that sent the Kiwami series on a new path. It is a bit unpredictable what state the Kiwami series is in right now. It's cool that spin-offs can get the Kiwami treatment, but does this decrease Kiwami 3's chances? We know Ishin had not previously been released to Western audiences, and that was a major reason RGG had remastered it. There clearly was demand from the fans. This shows RGG is willing to remake games. They could have just made a remastered version for the Western audiences, but they went an extra step further. That means the Kiwami series is not dead, and this ultimately opens up new paths for the Kiwami series with spin-offs as well. Although the game was only called Ryuji ga Gotoku Ishin Kiwami in Japan, this does not mean that the series is over, as RGG decided to just call it Like a Dragon Ishin because it never had a Western release here. Still, this does not solidify Yakuza Kiwami 3's chances, as maybe RGG is truly content with the remasters and might even drop the series after Ishin. Who's to say? What's important to get from this is that Kiwami had another go, and quite possibly will return again. If not for Yakuza 3, then maybe for Dead Souls or another spin-off. With all that being said, most of the assumptions made were very reasonable, with some evidence to back said claims. But now, we are gonna get more speculatory. When the series was getting rebooted with Yakuza 0, we saw careful planning in between the titles coming in the future. Yakuza 0 and Kiwami had some story elements planned together, Kiwami 2 had connections to both Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, and all these three titles set up characters and story arcs, while not that major, still present in future titles like Yakuza 7 and beyond. There was careful planning between all titles to plan certain things like Pocket Circuit Fighter, or the use of multi-style in Yakuza 0 and Kiwami. Knowing this, if a Kiwami 3 is currently getting made, it is somewhat possible that a Yakuza Kiwami 4 could be in the works as well. Chances are of the slimmest, but I'd reckon they would use the same engine for a proposed Kiwami 3 to create the title. Also, if both titles are getting worked on, we could have similar additions of overarching minigames and sub-stories between the two titles, as Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, and Yakuza Kiwami 2 had shared in the past. Also, I think it would be cool if they made a sub-story where Kiryu bumps into Hana in Yakuza Kiwami 3. It would do some world building for new fans that started out from the Kiwami series and not the remasters. And for heaven's sake, if they do decide to make a Kiwami 4, they need to change the hostess minigame, or remove that thing completely, because it sucked. Back to Kiwami 3. One last thing I would like to see is either a Kashiwagi saga or some other character story expansion. Kashiwagi's death was never really explained, and doing so in a saga-like story manner similar to Majima Saga in Kiwami 2 would be amazing. Maybe they could finally reveal Kashiwagi's tattoo. With recent news, it caught to my attention that in the Kiryu Ichiban version of Judgment in Yakuza 8, Karaoke, there was a character that suspiciously looked like Andre Richardson from Yakuza 3, the Roof Guy. Now, this quickly became memeable, out of all the ways to retcon another death of a Yakuza 3 character. Jokes aside, this model really doesn't fit in the scene. If it was my decision, I would have put the bartender there because he has some connections to both characters. But then that got me thinking, this could be a new model RGG made for a Kiwami 3. The resemblance is just uncanny, and it would be silly, but also an interesting way to foreshadow a Kiwami 3. Or maybe they just did it for the memes. I believe at one point, there was plans for a Yakuza Kiwami 3, but then RGG Studios decided to scrap the idea in pursuit of other projects. To end this off, if there was any indication for a Kiwami 3, I think now is most likely. RGG's plate is going to be clean after Yakuza 8, and a Kiwami 3 would be the most reasonable thing to expect. If for some reason it does not get announced sometimes next year, we can drop all hopes. But for now, let's all get ready for some Like a Dragon Gaiden action. See you next evening.